Be Me Ryan, 28. 2 years, with a girl named Madison, nice on paper, photos looked great, her parents liked me, my parents liked her. And for about the last 6 months of it, basically two roommates who happened to share a Netflix login and a bed. This is the story of how she spent weeks quietly building the perfect breakup, and how one calm text from me knocked the whole thing over a day before she could press play. I still think about how close she came to pulling it off. Let me back up and tell it properly, start to finish, because the order matters here. Things didn't blow up between us. There was no screaming match, no cheating that I ever found out about, no single bad night you could point at. It just went cold, slow, the way a room loses heat after you shut the radiator off and don't notice until you're already shivering. At first it was small stuff. Texts that used to come back in 2 minutes started taking 2 hours, then half a day. Then, oh sorry, didn't see this LOL at midnight, when I knew for a fact she'd had her phone in her hand all evening. I'd suggest grabbing dinner somewhere, she'd say maybe. Maybe became, I'm tired. Tired became her scrolling on the couch 3 feet away, while I talked to the side of her head and got nothing back. You know the exact vibe I'm describing. You're technically still in a relationship, but really you're just two people splitting rent on a feeling that already packed up and moved out months ago. For a long time I kept telling myself it was a phase. Work stress on her end, the gloomy part of the year, money being tight, whatever excuse fit that week. Guys do this constantly. We make excuses for it. We wait it out. We give it one more month and then one more after that. I gave it a lot of one more months, more than I'm proud of. Somewhere in the back half of last year, it stopped feeling like a slump. It started feeling like a decision she'd already made on her own and just hadn't bothered to inform me about. And here's the part I had no clue about at the time, while I was sitting there being patient like a golden retriever waiting by the door. Madison wasn't drifting at all. She was planning. I'll explain exactly how I found that out, but I want you to know it up front so you understand what I was actually standing in the middle of. So, the relationship's on life support. And I'm in that stage where you start clocking every tiny crack, because once you see the cracks, you can't unsee a single one of them. She'd give this little flinch when I'd put an arm around her on the couch. Nothing huge, just enough that I felt it. Our conversations shrank down to logistics. Who's buying groceries? Did you pay the internet? That kind of thing. She started taking phone calls in the other room, with the door pushed mostly shut. None of it was a crime I could name out loud. It was just 100 quiet little exits, one after another, day after day. One evening sticks in my head. I actually cooked, like a real dinner, set the table, lit the one candle we owned, because I was trying. She walked in, looked at all of it, said, "Aw, that's sweet," then ate maybe half of it with her phone propped against her water glass. Never asked how my day went, barely looked up the entire time. I sat there across from her thinking, okay, I'm not imagining this, this is real, this is what something dying in slow motion actually looks like. There were other nights like that, plenty of them, they just blur together now. Her birthday rolls around and I plan the whole evening, book the place she'd mentioned wanting to try, and she spends most of dinner texting under the table and answering me in half sentences. I asked once, pretty gently, if everything was all right between us. Got back a flat, "Yeah, why, you're being weird," which is the response designed to make you drop it and feel paranoid for asking, so I dropped it. Weekends started disappearing too. She'd make plans with Tara without mentioning them to me until she was already grabbing her keys at the door. I'd ask what time she'd be back and get a shrug. The apartment got real quiet. We stopped having actual conversations and started just narrating logistics at each other across rooms. I'd say goodnight and she'd already have her back to me, phone glowing against the pillow. None of it was dramatic enough to fight about. That's the trap of it, honestly. There's never one big thing to point at and say, "There, that's the problem, fix that." It's just a slow leak and you keep topping it off, hoping it'll hold. And one day you realize you've been the only one putting air in the tire for months. I'll be fair to myself and to her. I wasn't a perfect boyfriend by then either. I'd gone quiet. I'd stopped reaching for her as much, because reaching for someone who never reaches back just makes you feel pathetic after a while. But here's the difference that matters. I was still in the building, still showing up, still trying in my clumsy way. She had already left and was simply waiting around for the right moment to make her departure official and well lit. Now I have to bring up the work thing, because believe it or not, that boring little detail is what lit the fuse. Around that same stretch of time, my team at work got a new hire, a woman, brand new, and I'm not naming her because she genuinely has nothing to do with this story beyond being a name Madison latched onto. Nothing happened between us, nothing was ever going to happen. She was a coworker, and that's the entire extent of it. I mentioned her exactly once at home. One sentence, I'm not exaggerating. Something like, "Oh, we finally got someone new on the team, seems sharp, about time." That was the whole comment. Madison's face changed. I didn't think much of it in the moment, figured she was just tired again, her default setting that year. But looking back, that one dull little sentence flipped a switch in her head. And the switch wasn't ordinary jealousy the way you'd assume. It was closer to, "Oh no, I'm about to lose control of how this ends." Because in the version of events Madison had in mind, she leaves. She's the one who decides when and how it's over. The second she imagined there might be someone else stepping into the frame, even though there absolutely wasn't, her whole timeline suddenly got a lot more urgent. I pieced this part together later too. Apparently she went straight to Tara about it, spun the one boring sentence into a whole thing. Told Tara she had a feeling that something was different about him lately. The something different was that I'd finally gone quiet after months of being ignored, but in her version, that read as a guilty conscience. So now she wasn't just planning a breakup, she was planning it against a clock she'd invented herself. All right, now I have to explain how I even know what she was cooking up. Because at the time, I swear, I had zero idea. I found all of this out afterward. Her friend Tara ran her mouth to a couple of our mutual friends, it circled back to me, and then I ended up seeing some of the actual messages with my own eyes, which I'll get to. But I'm telling you the plan now, so the rest of this lands the way it landed for me. Tara is Madison's best friend, and Tara is the specific type of friend who never calms you down. She only ever winds you up. Every relationship has one of these orbiting it. The friend who treats your love life like it's their personal show, and they're the executive producer. For weeks, the two of them had been, in Tara's own words, working on the breakup. Not working on the relationship. Working on the breakup. Like it was a group assignment with a due date. The plan, once I pieced it together from everything I heard and saw later, was honestly almost impressive in how cold and deliberate it was. Madison wanted out. Fine, people fall out of love. I'm genuinely not mad at that part of it. But she didn't just want out. She wanted out on her terms. She wanted to be the one who walked away, the one who made the hard but mature decision, the one our friends would later describe as so strong for finally leaving. Basically, she wanted the breakup to be a stage production, and she wanted top billing and a good review. Tara was helping her cast it and block out the scenes. From what I gathered later, they genuinely workshopped it. Tara would suggest a line, Madison would test it out. They'd tweak the wording so it sounded caring instead of cold. There was apparently a whole discussion about where it should happen, not at home, because she didn't want me making it a thing in our own space, somewhere semi-public, a coffee place maybe. So I'd be less likely to react and she could leave whenever she wanted. They thought about what she'd wear, I'm not even kidding. Something that read as put together and calm, the look of a woman who's at peace with a tough decision. Tara's job, basically, was to be on standby right after, ready to take Madison out, tell her how brave she was, and start spreading the official version to the group before I could say anything. They'd even talked about how to handle the friends, who to call first, what order, how to frame it, so the sympathy landed on her side immediately. It was less a breakup and more a product launch. And the product was the story of Madison, the strong woman who finally walked away from a toxic relationship. They'd even picked a day. I'm not going to pretend I know the exact date. It was a weekend, I'm fairly sure a Saturday, because that specific detail came up later more than once. The concept was to wait until I happened to be in a good mood. That way she'd come across as gentle and reasonable when she did the deed, instead of cruel. She'd worked out a little speech for it, too. The usual material, how she'd grown so much, how she needed to find herself again, how she couldn't keep shrinking herself just to fit the relationship. All the lines you've heard recited 1,000 times in 1,000 of these stories. And there was one phrase she kept using with Tara that I only learned about after the fact, and it has stuck in my head ever since. She told Tara she was tired of enabling his toxicity, my toxicity. A guy who lit a candle and cooked her dinner and got left on red in his own apartment. But sure, in the script she was writing, I was the toxic one she was bravely escaping from. That was the framing she sold her best friend, and the exact framing she planned to sell everyone else once it was done. And the coworker thing, that one boring sentence, supercharged the entire operation. Because now, in Madison's head, there was a ticking clock on the wall. She'd somehow convinced herself I was already halfway out the door for someone else, which, one more time for the record, I was not. But the story she was building required her to leave before I did. If I left first, then she wasn't the strong woman who walked away. She was just one more girl who got dumped, and that outcome, to her, was completely unacceptable. So she moved the plan up, told Tara she was going to do it that weekend, have the talk, deliver the speech, be the bigger person, exit clean and graceful, then immediately go tell everyone her version while it was still warm and uncontested. She had the whole thing mapped down to the timing. Here's the one thing she forgot to put on the map. Me. Because while she was busy scheduling my heartbreak like it was a dentist appointment with a cancellation policy, I had quietly arrived at my own ending, completely separately, on my own. I didn't know about her plan, didn't know about Tara, the speech, the Saturday, the toxicity line, none of it. I just knew, in my gut, that I was finished. I'd reached the point where I wasn't even sad anymore, which is honestly the most dangerous point of all. Sad means you still care enough to hurt. I was somewhere past sad. Just tired, the deep kind of tired, where you finally stop arguing with yourself about whether to stay. I remember the exact moment it clicked, and it was nothing special. A normal weeknight, lights low, TV on, but neither of us watching. She was on the couch on her phone, I said something to her, and she gave me a one-word answer without lifting her eyes off the screen. And instead of the usual sting, I felt nothing. Just a flat, calm, quiet, yeah, this is over, somewhere in my chest. No drama attached to it, no anger, no urge to make a scene. I didn't want a confrontation, didn't want a tearful sit-down, definitely didn't want to sit across a table and watch her perform a sadness I knew she didn't actually feel. I just wanted out, cleanly, with whatever dignity I had left tucked safely in my pocket. So I made up my mind that I'd tell her and go. Now, people are going to say I took the coward's route by doing it over text. Maybe there's some truth to that. I'm not going to fight it too hard. But you have to understand, by that point, we barely communicated in person at all. The entire relationship had been conducted through a phone screen for months. Her choice, not mine, every step of the way. So honestly, a text felt like the most accurate possible way to end something that had quietly become a text thread between two roommates who didn't really like each other anymore. I didn't rush it. Thought about it for a day or two. Made sure I actually meant it and wasn't just having a bad night. Waited until the next evening when I had a clear head in a quiet apartment. And I want to stress this as hard as I can. I had absolutely no idea I was about to step directly onto a landmine she had buried for herself. In my mind, I was just ending my own relationship on an ordinary weeknight, nothing more. Turns out it was the evening before her big Saturday. Roughly one day before, she was going to run her entire carefully staged production. I beat her to it by about 24 hours. Pure, dumb accident. Best accident of my entire life. No contest. So I sat down and wrote the text, kept it short, kept it calm, made absolutely sure there was nothing in there she could twist or weaponize later. Something close to, hey, I think we both already know this hasn't really been a relationship for a long time now, and I don't have any hard feelings about it, but I'm done, and I'm going to step away. Please take care of yourself. Read it back twice. No insults, no blame, no 3-paragraph essay about everything she did wrong. Just a clean, quiet goodbye. Hit send, set my phone face down on the table, and went to take a shower. I felt physically lighter the instant it sent, like I'd been hauling a bag of wet sand around for half a year, and finally just set it down on the ground and walked away from it. I figured she'd reply with something cold and clipped, since that had basically been her whole personality lately. Maybe an okay, maybe a wow okay, maybe just silence, which honestly would have fit. I was ready for any of those. What I was in no way ready for was the explosion. I get out of the shower, towel on, hair still dripping. 7 missed calls, not exaggerating for effect. 7 actual calls in the time it takes to rinse shampoo out of your hair. and a solid wall of texts under them. The phone was buzzing so hard it had walked itself halfway across the table, and the messages were absolutely not what you'd expect from a woman who had supposedly already decided to leave me. First one was, "What? Where is this even coming from?" And that one made me actually laugh out loud, standing there in a towel dripping on the bathroom tile. Where is this coming from? From 6 straight months of you treating me like a piece of furniture you'd stopped noticing, Madison, that's where it's coming from. Next one, you can't just end things over text. That is so disrespectful. This from the woman who once answered, "You up?" with a single thumbs up emoji and then went to sleep. Then, "We need to talk about this in person. Call me right now." Then, a few seconds later, "I can't believe you do this. This isn't like you at all." And then, my personal favorite of the entire night. "I was actually going to talk to you this weekend. You didn't even let me say the things I needed to say." And there it was, that last text. That's the exact moment I understood I'd stepped on something buried, because she wasn't upset that the relationship was ending. She was furious that I was the one ending it, that I'd gone first. She had an entire weekend choreographed, and I walked in a day early and flipped on all the house lights mid-rehearsal. I didn't call her back that night, just sent one text, calm as still water, saying there really wasn't anything left to talk through, that I'd already said exactly what I meant, and that I genuinely wished her well, which, predictably, made everything worse. More calls, more texts. And the tone of them kept shifting, and watching it shift in real time was honestly one of the more fascinating things I've ever witnessed. She went from shocked to angry to, "Let's both be mature adults about this," to, "You're being unbelievably cruel right now," to, "After absolutely everything I did for this relationship." Everything she did for the relationship. She ate my candlelit dinner on her phone and rehearsed a goodbye speech with her best friend. That's the list. That's what she did. At some point that night, the messages switched tactics again. She tried sweetness, completely out of nowhere. Told me she'd been going through some things and never meant to pull away, that she still loved me and we could absolutely fix this if I'd just pick up the phone. That might have worked on me a year earlier. By this point, I'd heard every version of it too many times to feel anything but worn out. When the sweetness didn't land, she pivoted straight to guilt, said I was abandoning her, that she couldn't believe I'd throw away 2 whole years like they meant nothing. 2 years she'd spent the back half of with her back turned to me. But sure, the funniest pivot of the night was when she tried to act like this had somehow always been the plan we'd agreed on together. We both knew this was coming. I just wanted to do it the right way, and you took that from me. You wanted to do it the right way, meaning you wanted to do it your way, on your schedule, with your audience already seated and your speech already memorized. But I didn't write any of that back. I just stopped replying, left her on red, which, when you stop and think about it, is the precise thing she'd been doing to me for months on end. And I didn't even do it to be petty, that's the honest part. I genuinely had nothing left to say to her, but I'd be lying if I told you the silence didn't feel a little bit like justice settling into place. So, that was the night. Now, here's where it gets good, and where it stops being just a sad breakup and starts being a story worth telling. Because Madison's very first instinct, once the initial panic burned off, wasn't to grieve or reflect. It was to take control of the story. I told you, the breakup was always going to be a performance to her. And just because I'd yanked the curtain early didn't mean she was about to surrender the lead role without a fight. So, what does she do? She starts calling our mutual friends, that same night, and then all through the next day, working the phones like a campaign. And she's feeding every single one of them her version of events, which is that she ended it, that she'd been deeply unhappy for ages, that things between us had gotten toxic, that she finally found the strength to make the hard call and walk away from it. My goodbye text, in her telling, simply never happened. In her version, she's the one who left. She's the strong one, the mature one, the brave one who got herself out of a toxic situation with a difficult man. And for about a day, honestly, it kinda worked. A couple of people reached out to me very carefully, gently, the way you check on someone who just got dumped and might be fragile. "Hey man, heard you two split. You holding up okay?" I just told them, yeah, it ran its course, no big deal, and left it there. I wasn't about to go running around defending myself or pleading my case to anybody. I knew exactly what happened. I had the goodbye text sitting right there in my sent folder with the date on it, and I didn't feel any need to campaign for the truth. But here's the one thing Madison completely forgot to account for. Tara, good old Tara, the very friend who had helped her plan the entire thing from the start. See, Tara knew the actual truth, because Tara had basically been the project manager on Operation Perfect Breakup. And Tara, bless her overflowing heart, physically could not keep her mouth shut to save her life. At some point, Tara's talking to one of our mutual friends, a girl who's genuinely fair-minded and not on anybody's team. And Tara, probably trying to make Madison look sympathetic and strong, lets the whole thing slip. She's going on about how Madison had it all planned out so perfectly. How Madison was going to do it on Saturday so she'd come across as the bigger person. How he just beat her to it and completely ruined everything she had set up. Read that back slowly. He beat her to it. Meaning Madison did not, in fact, leave first. Meaning the entire "I ended it" story she'd been carefully selling to everyone was simply a lie. And Tara said all of it out loud, unprompted, to the one person in the group guaranteed to repeat it. So, now it's out. That fair-minded friend, clearly uncomfortable, comes to me a little awkwardly, asks me straight, "Did Madison break up with you, or did you break up with her?" Because she's been hearing two completely different stories, and they don't add up. I didn't make a speech about it. I just pulled out my phone and showed her the text. The goodbye, with the timestamp, right there, sent the evening before Madison's big planned Saturday. Didn't add a single word of commentary, didn't editorialize, just let her read it for herself. And her face did the thing, that little "oh" face a person makes when they suddenly realize which of the two versions is the real one. After that, it spread completely on its own. I didn't have to lift a finger or send a single message. The screenshot of my actual goodbye, date and all, plus Tara's loose lips doing half the work for me, handled the entire thing. Turns out, it's remarkably hard to be the brave girl who walked away when there's a time-stamped text proving you got left a full day before your own carefully scheduled exit. And then, the message she'd sent Tara surfaced too. That one I saw secondhand, but I absolutely saw it. The fair-minded friend ended up with a screenshot of it. I never asked exactly how. The group chats on that side had clearly been busy. She showed it to me, almost like she felt she owed it to me, like she wanted me to know she finally understood which one of us had actually been the patient one all along. Where Madison told Tara, in writing, that she'd do it Saturday so I look like the bigger person, in her own words, typed out, dated, undeniable. That single line basically ended any remaining debate about which one of us was the calculating one in this whole mess. So now Madison's standing in a spot she did not plan for in any of her scenarios. The story she'd built so carefully collapsed in on itself. Her own best friend torched it by accident. And instead of being the strong woman who left, she's now the girl who got dumped one day before she could perform her big exit, and then lied about it to the entire friend group. And this is where the whole thing flips. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I didn't quietly enjoy this part. Because everything Madison had been doing to me for months, she suddenly started receiving right back, almost word for word. She'd send me a long, emotional paragraph. I'd reply with one short line, or with nothing at all. She'd ask if we could, "Just talk, please, I'm begging you." I'd leave it on read for a full day, then send back a simple, "I don't think that's a good idea." The exact treatment she'd handed me for half a year, returned to sender, and I wasn't even doing it on purpose at this point. She started texting late at night, the way you only do when you can't sleep and the silence in the room has gotten too loud to ignore. I keep replaying how this all ended. I never meant for it to go like this, I swear. Can we please just talk? I feel like I never got to say my part. One night she sent a whole long one about how she'd realized some things about herself. How she hadn't been present and hadn't appreciated what she had, which is genuinely the speech you give when you've lost an audience, not a person. Another night it was anger again, telling me I'd humiliated her, that I'd made her look like a liar in front of everyone. I didn't make her look like anything. She wrote the lie, I just happened to send a text with a date on it. A couple of times she'd type for a while, the dots going, and then nothing would come through. I could picture her drafting some big paragraph and then deleting it, the same way I used to sit there for months wondering if anything I said even registered. And reading those back now, I finally get what was actually going on. She didn't truly want me back. What she genuinely could not stand was not getting to control the ending. She never got to give her speech, never got to be the one who decided, never got to stand up and walk out the door first while I sat there and absorbed it. I took all of that away from her by accident, with one calm little text, and that aided her far more than the actual loss of me ever did, which is the part that tells you exactly what the relationship was really about for her by the end. She wasn't mourning us. She was mourning the version of events where she came out looking like the winner. I think if I'd called her back that first night and let her do the talk in person, she'd have been fine within a week. She'd have her story, her closure, her place as the brave one, and she'd have moved on without a backward glance. What she couldn't process was an ending she didn't author. 2 years, and the thing she fought hardest over wasn't me. It was the credits at the end of the movie. Meanwhile, over on the friend group side of things, the ground just kept quietly tilting away from her. Tara backed way off. I think she finally realized she'd personally handed me the smoking gun, and she got embarrassed enough to go quiet about the whole subject. The mutual friends who'd gotten the polished "I left him" speech now knew the real timeline, and you can't unknow a timestamp. Nobody staged some big dramatic public confrontation. That's not really how any of it went down. It was more that the air in the group just shifted, slowly, on its own. The sympathy she'd been so busy collecting simply dried up. A couple of people I hadn't spoken to in a while reached out to me out of nowhere, told me they respected how I'd handled the whole thing, said, almost sheepishly, that they'd always felt something was a little off about the way she treated me, which, where exactly was that energy 6 months ago when I needed it? But I'll take it now, thanks. One of them told me something that stuck with me. He said that when Madison gave him her "I left him" speech, parts of it sounded almost rehearsed, too clean, the same exact phrases she used on the next person. At the time, he figured she was just hurt and repeating herself. Once the timeline came out, he realized he'd been listening to a script. That's the thing about polishing a story too much before you tell it. It stops sounding like something that happened to you and starts sounding like something you wrote. Another mutual friend just quietly stopped inviting her to things. Not a dramatic cutoff, no announcement. She just slid down everyone's list. And Tara, who'd been so eager to produce the whole show, suddenly didn't want her name anywhere near it. I heard she tried to walk back what she'd said, claimed she'd been misunderstood. But you can't really misunderstand. She was going to do it Saturday, so she'd look like the bigger person. That sentence only means one thing. I didn't gloat about any of it. Didn't post a single thing. Didn't drag her name. Didn't recite the whole saga to anyone who'd sit still long enough to listen. Honestly, I never needed to. The facts were just sitting there with timestamps attached, and people aren't nearly as dumb as folks like Madison assume they are. The quiet version of being right hits completely different than the loud version. You don't have to convince a single person of anything when the proof tells the entire story for you. Some time rolled by after all that. I'm not going to pretend I bounced straight back like nothing happened. 2 years is still 2 years of your life. But I'll tell you honestly, the relief outweighed the sadness by a wide margin, and faster than I expected. I'd been carrying that dead relationship around on my back for the better part of half a year. Setting it down, even messily, even like this, felt like getting a whole piece of my own life handed back to me. I started doing normal things again, seeing friends without first checking my phone to gauge whether she was in a mood, cooking dinner just for myself and actually enjoying every bite of it, candle and all, sleeping through the night. Turns out a huge chunk of what I'd been writing off as vague stress had a name, and the name had been ignoring me on the couch the whole time. My appetite came back, my focus at work came back. The new coworker turned out to be exactly what I'd said, just someone competent on my team, nothing more, and we got along fine as colleagues. Friends I'd drifted from during the relationship started checking in again, the ones I'd basically let Madison schedule out of my life without realizing it. I picked up a couple of old habits I'd quietly dropped to keep the peace at home. Nothing dramatic, no big transformation montage, just a guy slowly remembering what his life felt like before it got small. And then, almost like clockwork, the message I should have seen coming finally arrived. This is a few weeks out now. Things between us had gone fully quiet. The late-night texts had finally stopped coming. And then one ordinary evening, my phone lights up on the table. Madison. "Hey, can we talk?" 3 little dots underneath it. That classic typing then stopping 3 dots. And I just looked at it. Not with anger, not even with all that much feeling left in me at all. Just looked at it sitting there on the screen. This was the woman who spent weeks methodically planning to dump me on her terms, who scheduled my heartbreak like an errand she had to run before the weekend, who told her best friend in writing that she'd time it all out so she'd look like the bigger person, who, the very second I went first, got on the phone to everyone we knew and lied about who left who. Hey, can we talk? On her terms, at her timing, the moment she felt like reopening the whole thing for her own benefit. And for the very first time in our entire 2 years together, the timing belonged to me instead of her. So I did the one thing that actually fit the moment perfectly. I left it on red, didn't reply, didn't block her, didn't fire off a paragraph, didn't explain myself or my silence. Just let it sit there, read, unanswered, hanging. The same exact silence she'd been so comfortable handing me for months without a second thought. Here's the genuinely funny thing about her master plan, once you actually lay it all out flat. The whole carefully built scheme had one single requirement holding it up. It needed me to sit perfectly still and patiently wait my turn to get dumped. That was it. That was the whole foundation. The entire performance depended on me staying passive just long enough for her to hit her mark on Saturday and say her lines. One short text on a quiet weeknight, and the whole script fell straight out of her hands and scattered. She didn't actually want to leave me, not really, not when it came down to it. She wanted the credit for leaving. She wanted to be able to tell the story where she walked, she decided. She was the strong one who got out. The relationship itself was over either way, and we both knew that part going in. The only thing genuinely left on the table at the end was who got to hold the pen and write the last line. And the moment I picked it up first, without even knowing there was a contest, all that was left for her was panic. Panic that the story wasn't hers to tell anymore. Panic that, for once in 2 years, she wasn't the one holding the controls. Panic that the toxic guy she'd written into the villain role of her little movie had simply walked off the set, calmly, and pulled the door shut behind him. That's the whole thing, start to finish. No screaming match, no big reveal in front of a crowd, no elaborate revenge plot with moving parts. Just a girl who planned the perfect exit down to the day, and a guy who, without even knowing the plan existed, happened to use the only door first. She got to spend a few quiet weeks learning exactly what it actually feels like. The short replies, the left on red, the decision getting made about you while you're not even in the room. Every last thing she'd been serving me for months, set right back down in front of her on her own plate. Turns out the terms were never really hers to begin with. She just finally got to find out for once what it feels like to be standing on the other side of them. And the last word, after 2 solid years of her always somehow getting the last word in everything, was no word at all. Thanks for reading, Anons.